Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to announce my today's guest, who is a prominent novelist in the United States, Mr. Aaron Charpentier. Good afternoon, Mr. Charpentier. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, Mr. Kacin. Thank you for having me again.
Mr. Aaron Charpentier, obviously, let's talk about the current situation in Ukraine, current situation in the world. You probably heard about Elon Musk and his tweets regarding the situation in Ukraine. Let's say his tweets can be split up to two directions. One, tweets devotes to, let's say, usage in Ukraine of Starlink satellites, which helps Ukraine army and Ukraine forces to fight and to resist Russian aggression, to fight back Ukrainian territories. And second number of tweets, they were devoted to the peaceful solution between Ukraine and Russia. So Elon Musk argues that Ukraine has to agree to a peaceful solution with Russia. The war has to be stopped. Ukraine has to find common understanding with Russia, even though Ukraine has to agree with new referendums under the auspice of the United Nations, and Ukraine has to agree that Crimea will be Russian territory at least for another 20 years. Again, Musk calls Ukraine to find a peaceful solution with Russia to stop the war. But we understand that actually this one scenario Russia seeks, because in this case Russia will be able to rearm itself and to come back to fight another and to conquer another Ukrainian territories. And obviously Musk's solution was criticized not only by European officials, but also by US governmental officials, which totally support Ukraine in its fight against Russia. So what is your attitude to, let's say, Musk plan, to generally these calls for peace solution between invader and the victim, please?
Well, Elon Musk, first of all, he doesn't represent the United States diplomatically anyway. He basically represents himself, his own business interests. And, we can't really take a lot of what celebrities, and well, he's a little more than a celebrity, obviously. He's a businessman and the richest man on the planet. But I mean, he's not a diplomat, and he doesn't know. It's just not his field. Just because you're good at one in one area, it doesn't mean that you're going to be good at everything. And I just don't think that anyone should really take his tweets that seriously on such matters. I think he has done some really good things for Ukraine, and I just think that I hope that he continues to help out, but within that capacity, in technology, because that's his expertise. So I wouldn't take it too seriously. And again, he doesn't represent the American government. The American government completely supports Ukraine and Ukraine's efforts, and the American government supports Ukraine and how they want to conduct or even prolong the war. That's what matters. I mean, I don't think that some random tweets really holds any weight, and so I think it's nothing to worry about. And he also doesn't understand Russia, and I don't think that he understands the sort of Slavic, if you will, state of mind. I think that Ukrainians and Russians and Americans and South Africans have a very different way of thinking, a different mindset, and as you said, he doesn't understand that once there's some kind of settlement, that Putin will come back, right? And actually, it'll just be the arrest for the Russian military, and then they'll just build up, and then they'll attack again. So, I wouldn't take it seriously.
Soon there will be a midterm elections to the US Congress, and obviously these elections will eventually affect to the results of the upcoming presidential elections, which will be in 2 years in the United States in November 2024. You probably know some statements which were made by former President Donald Trump, who actually criticized President Biden's policy of supporting Ukraine. And we hear that many people, which can be treated as a kind of ultra-conservative, they opposing a very firm support which current US government expressed towards Ukraine. So what do you think, how this mood will affect the outcome of elections? How Russian invasion into Ukraine and generally this 8 months journey will affect an outcome of US elections? And do Americans still support providing assistance to Ukraine?
I think most Americans still support helping Ukraine, but I don't think that the war in Ukraine will affect the election. I think it should. It's because it's an international problem, and it needs to have international solutions. And of course, the United States is obviously a key player in that, should be a key player in that role. As in support and an international, mediator. But I just don't think that voters will see it that way.
You just mentioned an international campaign or international activities, international solution, which has to be applied to Russian aggression towards Ukraine. Let's say the solution to Russian aggression towards Ukraine. And this one argument and this one question is pumping up in different discussions about the future of United Nations, about the future of Security Council of United Nations, where, as you know, there is a unanimous voting, which means that Russia can always block the decision of Security Council. So it makes United Nations ineffective organization. So what do you foresee? Will United Nations overcome these difficulties? So we will see a kind of maybe qualified majority voting in United Nations Security Council or United Nations. The successor of League of Nations will actually go the same way as the League of Nations, which actually self-destroyed because it could not forestall German military rivalry in the 30s of 20th century?
I think I think it's highly unlikely, but I think that if NATO was involved more in the war, at least militarily, and there were boots on the ground, or at least if there was a no-fly zone, then I just think that if the West was more involved in the war, and it is international, but it's not. It's not an international war. I mean, per se. But I think if Putin used nuclear weapons, then that could be a possibility.
Yeah, we hear these discussions, and we have an official statement already made by different politicians in the US and in Europe that in case Russia uses nuclear weapon against Ukraine, then there will be a military answer on, let's say, on the part of West. Obviously, West won't use a nuclear weapon against Russia, but they promise to use a conventional type of military. So basically, to destroy Russian army at all. This is one scenario which you just mentioned, and obviously there is another scenario, and it comes back to Belarus, which has the same border with Ukraine at the same time with Poland and with Russia. And you know that in Belarus there is a dictator, Mr. Lukashenko, who holds the power during the last 30 years, almost 30 years, 28 years. And Putin puts a serious pressure on him to force him to send troops to Ukraine. So in case Belarus comes to a game officially, it means that we have a triple war on the European continent, and it means that this is the beginning of World War III, because obviously Poland, Lithuania would definitely, let's say, participate in this conflict. And if they will participate, it means that NATO has to come to a game. So bearing in mind these nuclear threats, which you mentioned, and the participation of Belarus, which became more realistic than it used to be when we had our previous interview, are we now, let's say, on the age of at the beginning of the, let's say, World War III, or let's say European conflict on a larger scale?
Well, I think you can call it World War III. You can call it a war on a larger scale. In the end, it's all about semantics, perhaps. I think that also, you can't predict the way a war is going to go. I generally think that Ukraine is going to be the victor, but there's no, you can't predict war. So I mean, the outcome of a war. You can make predictions, based on what's going on the ground, and just based on things like that. But I believe Ukraine will win this war, but I can't say that with certainty. But I do generally believe that, and I don't know. We don't know. We can't read Putin's mind. We don't know if he'll actually use tactical nuclear weapons, because we didn't think that he would do a lot of the things that he's done already. And I just think that the more he's backed into a corner, the more likely he'll become more desperate.
Mr. Charpentier, thank you very much for this interview. As always, I appreciate your time, your dedication to the topic, that you support Ukraine, and you always find time to give us an interview. So we hope that we will continue our talks in the future. Mr. Charpentier, novelist from the United States, the one who used to visit Ukraine as well, today was on our TV show at Media Inform TV channel, Odessa. Thank you very much, Mr. Charpentier.
Thanks for having me again, sir.